What's up, everybody? Dino here. Welcome back to Codecast Live, and today we're going to be talking about dimensions of elements in the page, and we're going to be manipulating them in a very specific way. But first, I want to explain kind of what dimensions kind of are in elements in HTML and CSS. But we're just going to go right into the code while I explain that. So there's a link down at the below the video that gets you to this code pen here, which is where we're going to be working. So I'm going to make a regular div in this page, just like that. And this div, I'm going to add some CSS to it. So we're just going to regularly select our div here, and we're going to put a border of 30 pixels, solid and red. Okay. So I'll make this this big thing here, and if you didn't know already, that the body actually has that margin. So we're going to remove the margin from the body so we get a much better view of what's going on here. There we go. Okay, so we have the body. I'm sorry, not the body. We're talking about the div. Sorry about that. So the body has the margin 0, so it gets rid of that outside edge here. And then we have the div. So the div is this box here, which has this white line. It really shouldn't have a white line there. It might be a sub-pixel thing going on there. But let's give it some dimension. Let's give it a height of 200 pixels. All right. There we go. So now we have a height of the box of 200 pixels. Now, what's actually kind of important here is you actually, when you put 200 pixels on this box, a lot of people assume by default that the 200 pixels is actually being applied from the top of this border here to the bottom of this border here. Okay? So I'm just going to illustrate something here. I have 200 pixels for height and width. That makes a square. That's something that we could do is we could put these dimensions on as height and width. We could also do it by percentage. So if I do 50%, you'll notice that it doesn't actually look like 50% from edge to edge. And this is what I'm trying to illustrate here. From edge to edge, it actually looks much larger. And even if we resize the browser, you could see that the box looks much larger than 50%. And just so you know that the percentage, whenever we use a percentage on something, it's always based off of the parent's dimension. So the width of 50% is based off of the body, and the body is now right now 100% of the window. So that's why we're getting the 50%. But it looks like it's not 50%, right? I mean, if you look at CodePen on the bottom right here, you can actually see how big the window is. So it says 750 pixels. This is probably like 400. Something like that. I could actually tell you exactly how much it is. That would be using this border. So let's take a look at if I remove the width again. If I move the width, you can see that it spans the entire length of the body. It's like basically looks like 100% of the body. But what I'll do here is I'll put the width back and I'll set it to 100%. Oop, if I type it right. There we are. Now I set the width to 100%. You should expect that the width should look exactly the same as if I didn't set the width at all, but you'll notice that it actually extends outside of the boundaries of our page. You can see that with the scroll bar. It extends out by 60 pixels. And where am I getting that number from? Well, it's coming from the border. So the border is extending another 30 pixels here, and then on the other side, another 30 pixels here. So it's basically 100%, which is what we put down as, what was it, 750 before. So 750 pixels. Plus 30 plus 30. So that means it's 810, this whole big box here. Okay? And that's really not something that we want in terms of manipulating dimensions. Usually what we want is we want everything to be contained inside of its border, which is essentially what the box model is all talking about. The box model is discussing the layers of an onion of an element. And we can actually see that if we look at our dev tools and we go into this panel over here, which is where our style is under elements. And you can see that we have a margin kind of layer that goes on the outside of this thing. Then we have a border, right, which is the 30 pixels from around. Then inside we have the padding. And then this last box here is called the content box, and that's where the content goes. Now, when I apply a height or a width to a box, automatically it gets assigned to the content box without any other kind of declarations in our CSS. So when I apply 200 pixels, you can see it's being applied right there. And then the width is actually being computed with the percentage based off of the Windows width. So the Windows width right now is probably, yeah, it's like 280 something, right about, yeah, 281. So that's what's getting computed over here. You can see it's not really updating right now, but it's okay. So anyway, So yeah, so we have everything dimension-wise is being attributed to the content box. So what we really want to do is actually attribute it to the border box. And we could change that by saying box sizing. Whoops, box sizing. I'm just not going to type it, am I? Sizing. That one. And we could say border box. Okay? And you'll see now that we actually get a little bit of an update here. This box is now going to be updated to manage the size of the body. Its parent, right? So now the width is 100% of the body, so it always stays within the borders of this window, and the height is actually 200 pixels from border to border. Okay, so that whole thing, and you can actually see it in here, the height of the content box is now 140, plus 30 is a total 200. Okay, so it's much more common for us to actually put box sizing on all the elements when we handle layout. So again, if we remove box sizing, you'll notice that it expands outside of the boundaries of what we're looking for. If we put box sizing on, it'll really fix this up really nicely so that when you do percentage-based dimensions, like if I was to put two divs next to each other, each one could be 50% without the border expanding any farther. So what you'll also notice is that when we do this box sizing method, you might see in some CSS, people select everything in the page by doing something that looks like this. This is a star, and then we put the box sizing in the star selector. And what this means is that the star selector just basically says select everything that's on the page and apply this rule to it. Okay? So that's one of the ways that you might see this being applied. And another way you might see this being applied is if we do HTML or root up here, and they'll apply the box sizing there. And then we say box sizing inherit. Now you might want to know what the difference between these stuff is. I'm actually not sure exactly why folks have started doing this. I believe this is actually not good. And the reason I believe that this is not good is because of this inheritance thing. If we were to change, let's put a span in here, actually. Or, yeah, let's put a span in here. We'll put a span right in here. Actually, let's put a P, which is a block element. Put a P in here, and we'll say hello world. Okay. Now everything is being this kind of box sizing, but it's being inherited by the first element, which is HTML or root. I could actually put either one of these is fine. HTML or root is basically the same thing. But what's happening is every other element on the page is being getting its box sizing inherited. So everything's getting this border box. So the problem with this rule right here is if I decide in here that I need to change the box sizing rule to, let's say, padding box, that means that additionally the P is going to inherit that style from the div. And I might not want that. I might actually want just the div to have a padding box. Okay? So it's much better, in my opinion, for us to do box sizing border box on everything and leave out the rule for inheritance in here. Okay? So that means that every individual thing will get this box sizing by default. And if I want to override something like with padding box here, in this particular case it's not doing anything, but if I want to override every one of these things with padding box, I could do it as an individual basis. Or if I wanted to actually get the inheritance that is being applied up on top here, I can select the P and basically just say box sizing inherit. And if I really just wanted that inheritance, I would get it from over here. Okay, so that's being much more explicit about what the inheritance actually happens, as opposed to just blindly putting inheritance on everything like it is happening up here. So that's why I much rather having this rule just like this as opposed to the inheritance. And then if I need to change the box sizing, I do it very explicitly on the elements that need to be changed. So if I want to do it specifically on the div, I could do that. And if I specifically want box sizing to be inherited, I can do that explicitly there. So I'm doing it very explicitly. But generally speaking, these two rules on the top here, I put on practically every CSS file that I create, because it really does help when you're doing layout. And of course the body margin, it doesn't really make sense anymore in terms of how we make web pages now, because body margin, which is default to 8 pixels, was created basically because we wanted to create documents really quickly, and I mean like scientific documents. So now that we don't do that much as many anymore, and we really make applications, we set the margin to 0 as almost like a reset sort of thing. So, like I said, these 2 rules you should get to know, and you should probably put in your CSS probably from the top, and just regularly consider them on a regular basis. Regularly. Okay, so enough about that. Thank you for joining me on the box sizing stuff for today. For next week, I actually won't be live, I don't believe. I have an event that I have to go to, but I still plan on making a video, and we'll do some kind of code exercise, but again, it won't be live. It'll just be recorded, and we'll put it up on the same time that these videos usually come out. And thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you guys next week, just sort of. All right, later.